Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always. What are we looking at today?
Today we're tackling the Hydro Towers project.
Mm.
And I gotta say, this plan is really ambitious. Turning those vacant lots, the ones we see in almost every city,
Yeah.
turning those into working hydroponic farms.
Wow. I mean, it's a pretty bold idea, right?
Yeah, super bold. I mean, we've all seen those empty lots kind of just sitting there,
Eyesores, yeah.
total eyesores.
Huh.
But this project wants to make them, like green oases in the
Wow.
middle of the concrete jungle.
Yeah, and it's not just about aesthetics either. I mean, think about the implications for land use, especially in those super dense urban areas where you can't really, have a traditional farm.
Right. So we're talking like taking advantage of vertical space.
Exactly. It's like building up instead of out. Way more efficient when you're dealing with limited space.
Okay, so I'm with you, but I think it's worth taking a step back for a second. For those listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is hydroponics?
Okay, so imagine this. Instead of planting in soil, you're suspending the plant's roots in a nutrient-rich water solution. So they're getting everything they need to grow, but without all the limitations of traditional soil-based farming.
Interesting. So no dirt involved at all.
Nope. And this plan specifically talks about using a vertical NFT system, which stands for nutrient film technique. It's known for being really efficient, both in terms of space and the water usage.
Okay, so that makes sense. But I'm looking at the plan here, and they're talking about incorporating aquaponics.
Yeah, that's one of the really cool parts of this project. They're actually looking at integrating fish farming into the system. So you've got this closed loop ecosystem where the fish waste provides nutrients for the plant.
Oh, hold on. So you're telling me they could potentially have like locally grown, produce any fresh fish, all from the same system?
That's the idea. And it's all about sustainability too, because aquaponics significantly reduces water usage and waste compared to both traditional farming and separate fish farming.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the green spaces, we've got the sustainable food production.
Right.
But the thing that really stood out to me in this plan was their focus on community. They're not just building these high-tech farms and like dropping them into neighborhoods. They want to make them a real part of the community,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. They're talking about partnering with local schools so the farms can be like living classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
teaching kids about sustainability and urban farming and all that.
Yeah,
Plus, they're also planning to work with existing nonprofits to tap into those networks and resources they already have, really make sure that the project is embedded in the community.
totally. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how they actually plan to make all this happen.
Yeah.
The plan outlines a pretty detailed implementation process.
Right.
They're going to start with workshops and hands-on training for residents.
Which makes sense. You can't just hand someone a hydroponic system and expect them to know what to do with it, right?
Exactly. So they're really emphasizing that hands-on learning, which I think is smart. Gives people a sense of ownership over the project, too.
For sure. And speaking of ownership, one of the more innovative aspects of the plan is their partnership with Businessman Television.
Oh, yeah, that caught my eye, too. I mean, at first I thought it was just for publicity, but they're actually going to be training residents in media skills, like video editing, social media marketing, all that stuff.
It's really forward-thinking, I think, because it empowers the residents to tell their own WN stories about the project and to market their produce directly to consumers. It's community building and economic development all rolled into one.
Clever. All right, so we've talked about the vision, the community involvement, the implementation, but let's be real. All this takes money. What's the budget looking like for the Hydro Towers project? And how are they planning to, keep the lights on long term?
So the initial budget is around $30,000. A big chunk of that is going towards the hydroponic equipment itself, plus the cost of training residents, of course. But the really important thing to highlight here is that they're aiming to be self-sustaining.
Okay. How so?
The plan lays out a three-pronged approach. They're going to be applying for grant funding, seeking contributions from local businesses,
Okay.
and this is key generating revenue from the sale of the produce. So they're not just relying on handouts, they're building a business.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm also curious about the timeline, like how long until these vacant lots are actually, producing food?
Well, they've got a pretty clear roadmap laid out in the plan. They're estimating 1 to 2 months for the planning phase. That includes things like finalizing funding, securing the locations for the farms, and getting the community fully on board. Then they're looking at 3 to 6 months for implementation. That's building the towers, training the residents, and setting up distribution channels.
So realistically, we're talking less than a year before they have their first harvest.
Potentially, yeah.
That's incredible. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the potential downsides. What kind of risks or challenges do they anticipate?
Well, they're not shying away from the fact that there could be some bumps in the road. The plan acknowledges that there could be funding gaps, technical issues with the systems,
Yeah.
even just lower than expected community participation.
Right, that makes sense.
But they're being proactive. They've factored in contingency funds. They've got robust training programs. And maybe most importantly, they're committed to transparent communication with the community.
So if problems arise, they're going to be upfront about it.
Exactly. They want to build trust and address any concerns head on so that even if there are challenges, everyone feels like they're part of the solution.
Okay, so that all sounds good. But at the end of the day, how are they going to measure the success of this project? What are the key indicators they're focusing on?
Well, they've got a two-pronged approach. They've got short-term goals, and then there's the long-term vision.
Okay, break it down for me.
So in the short term, they want to increase access to fresh, affordable food in those communities.
Makes sense.
They want to equip residents with, those valuable new skills. And of course, create those visible signs of neighborhood revitalization. So it's not just about food, it's about community pride too.
Right. Okay, and long term.
Long term, they're aiming to build a truly sustainable urban farming model, something that can be replicated in other communities.
Yeah.
They want to create local jobs, strengthen those community bonds, and ultimately create a more resilient local food system.
Love it.
And to track all that, they'll be looking at metrics like, the number of participants, the volume of produce sales, and getting feedback directly from the residents themselves.
So it's really about making a tangible difference in people's lives. It's pretty amazing to think about, right?
Yeah. I mean, just imagine, instead of those empty lots, you've got these vibrant hydroponic towers filled with fresh food right in the heart of our communities. It's a whole new way of thinking about food production, A&D community development.
It really is. And here's a thought for all our listeners. Could this model work in your community? What unique challenges or opportunities might it present?
That's a good question. One to ponder, for sure.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And as always, stay curious.
See you next time.